Welcome again. And today will be a focus. We'll be focusing on marketing and specifically to FMCG. As most of you guys would be fascinated by this term and would want to get into the top FMCG names that come to your campus. So we have some FMCG guys over here, and again to add a little consulting flavor as well as some tech flavor, we have Shweta. I'll quickly first introduce the speakers, and then we'll talk about their experiences of summers, and then quickly we will get into what sort of preparation strategies they had for their process. Their internship process, what sort of experience they had. Then they'll give you some valuable advice from their side, whatever they feel would be relevant this year going forward. And after that, again, the way you can convert your internship into a PPO, that will again be taken care of. And after that, we'll be talking about some generic MBA doubts that you might have with respect to, say, the profile that you must be maintaining or building upon to make sure that you land up at a place where you are aspiring to get into. So that is something which will be taken care of. And after that, we'll towards the latter part of the session, we'll be opening for questions. So whatever questions you have, you can shoot to these people, and they'll be happy to answer you. So on that note, just let's quickly kickstart the session. So first up, we have three speakers today. First, we have Kushal. So Kushal completed his MBA from NMIMS Mumbai in marketing in 2019 batch. He interned with Pidilite, and after that, he got a PPI from L'Oreal, and currently is working with L'Oreal as a management trainee. So L'Oreal, so Kushal was also an international winner of L'Oreal Brandstorm 2018, and that was held in Paris. So he would be also talking about his experience as to what sort of strategies he had. Just basic level strategies, because we will just not talk about competitions in detail in this session. So that's Kushal for you. Then we have Safdar. Safdar is a pass out of SPGI in batch 2020, and he interned with Nestle, and currently he's placed at Nestle itself, converted Nestle into a PPO. So he completed his MBA in marketing, and and the third person that we have on call is Shweta. So Shweta is an MIMS pass out as well, of 2018 batch. She interned with Henkel, and then she got placed into Vodafone. And after that, she's currently working. She switched her job from Vodafone to EY, and currently she's working as a senior consultant at EY. So they are the speakers for the session, guys. You may one by one add to whatever introduction I gave, and then we'll dive into the session. So I'll start with Kushal, if you want to add something.
Thank you so much for that introduction. So yeah, I think it pretty much sums up whatever is there from the last 2 to 3 years ka experience. And yeah, like maybe once I start speaking about something in particular, then we can just go on. So I think my introduction to tune de diya, so I think that's done. So
But then one thing I would like to add is Kushal actually completed his CA IPCC. So he was a finance student when he was doing his BCom, but then he switched to marketing, and then he did. He actually did it pretty successfully. So that is also, some people might be having doubts as to whether to go for marketing or finance. So Kushal can be the right guy where you can actually ask him whether, what did he look at while he was deciding whether to go for marketing or finance. So just giving a heads up on that. So Safdar, if you want
do you
to add
want
something.
me to talk about that? I can talk about that if you want me
Yeah,
to talk
sure,
about
sure.
that
Go
right
ahead. Absolutely, go ahead. This is your introduction.
now. Yeah. So yeah, the reason I think it's interesting to talk about this is because this was a very big thing in my mind before I laid out plans for myself. I wanted to do marketing and then eventually maybe get into an FMCG and then try career then try that particular direction. But yeah, so guys, how it shaped out for me was that I was basically so I'm from Calcutta, and I belong to a typical Madu family wherein most of the times people think dhanda and like they expect their kids to have gotten into commerce mostly. So hadn't really thought much about maybe choosing my stream also at that point of time. But yeah, I think commerce is something that I would have been more comfortable with anyway. And eventually that happened. So I was doing my BCom from St. Xavier's, Calcutta. And just like I think 90% of the commerce students in Calcutta who were doing CA, I was also doing the same. So I cleared my CPT and my IPCC in the first shot only. But again, then I think that's the time when I started thinking whether I really wanted to do this or not, and I realized that finance was not something that really excited me. And that is when I took the call of dropping CA. So it's not like I tried for a CA finals or anything. I just dropped it, like just left it, and then tried to get into MBA, and then things. Like luckily or in a very positive way kind of worked out for me. So yeah, Brandstorm as a competition is something that clicked for me, and I think that worked out, and we got PPIs. So L'Oreal India just gives PPIs. They don't give PPOs, at least in the not 1 to 2 years that I've known in the last you know time span. So that is how it was, and then it worked out. And then the only thing that I want to point out over here is that finance was something, I mean, choosing or taking this decision of leaving finance and getting into marketing was very tricky. And when I was preparing my CV, I remember my seniors in college telling me ki tu ye dalna chahta hai kya CV mein, because there will be a lot of questions on this ki are you so fickle minded that you just left finance and got into marketing. But I kept it, even though a lot of seniors did suggest me that I should not do that. But I did keep it because I had an answer to, why I wanted to shift and how my interest in marketing grew and why my choice was supported by reasons. So I think as far as that's there, and even if you have a very drastic change in your career option, it should be fine if you have a very valid explanation to that. So yeah, I think that is what worked out. And that's majorly all that I want to say on that front.
Okay. So Kushal, did you even start with your articleship, or you just dropped it after clearing ITC? Maybe
I
you
just
might have
dropped it.
started.
I did not start with my articleship. I just dropped it. Like I did not pursue it further. So there was a
Mhm.
lot of criticism from home ki, does this even make sense and all, but I just dropped it. Like I think right now I could have maybe still done marketing after completing my CA and all. Wouldn't have really
Mhm.
maybe like I would have had an extra degree, maybe so to say, if obviously I would have cleared finals, which is again 75% of CA in reality. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I just took that call and I was like कि नहीं यार CA नहीं करना है, मन नहीं था.
Great, great. Yeah, Safdar, if you want to add something to your introduction.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So no, nothing else. I think I had a similar trajectory like Kushal. Got into St. Xavier's College, Calcutta, gave CPT, but I think my epiphany came a little earlier. I realized right after CPT I don't want to do this because in my class I think 60 out of 70 people were doing it, and also I discovered that I think I'm better off pursuing marketing. So in my third year I took marketing as my specialization, and since then there's been no turning back. So it's been so good so far.
So Kushal, what was your specialization for undergrad? Finance or marketing?
Same. I chose marketing in the third year. Yeah.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
great.
because IPCC got done towards the end of first year. So uske
Uh,
baad I had the whole second year to think through this thing. So third year was like, by that point I was sure that I wanted to do marketing.
okay, okay, okay. Shweta, if you want to add something, I think you will definitely have a lot of things to add because there have been a
I
plethora
think
of things which are not covered.
yeah, I think Harsh pretty much summarized my after MBA life or the my
Yeah.
MBA life, but I think a lot of people will resonate with me because unlike two of the other guys, I am an engineer, so I did not have any choice to shift to finance or marketing between my graduation. I chose IT and I had to complete 4 years of my engineering over there. Post that, even I worked with an IT company for 2 years, and then I decided that I want to pursue MBA. So, and I think marketing, I was pretty much sure that I want to do it in marketing. Finance was not my cup of tea from the starting, but I was just confused that I want to balance myself between the marketing and consulting. So I think I chose the latter one, so I am in consulting right now.
So
Sure,
cool.
sure.
Let us just then quickly start with your individual experiences, and again I'll throw the ball in Kushal's court. So Kushal, you can probably start with your experience, and before that, obviously, because you were a part of placement committee, and you would have had better experiences over there in your first year itself. So probably I'll let you take that as well in this question. Go ahead.
Sure. So should I talk about my college experience specifically in like?
Yeah, yeah. Your summer internship experience, as to your summer's process. I mean, from the start till the end. I mean, till the time you got placed. I mean, how was that trajectory? I mean, whether you were placed in the very first week, very first day, after then you had to give multiple
Yeah.
interviews in one day. How did you cope with that stress? Things like that.
Okay. So yeah, I think again, unlike a lot of engineers or even commerce grads, most of the students I think in MBA when they join, they are still confused in their first couple of months. Ki marketing lo, ki finance lo, and they'll talk to a lot of seniors, a lot of friends, and try and figure out what is it that exactly suits their profile. For me, none of it was really there. I knew ki marketing hi karna hai. And FMCG as an industry is something that like everybody keeps talking about. यार कि marketing to FMCG, अगर FMCG हो गया तो this that blah blah. So that was there, but again, I don't understand why that's there, because FMCG is just like one industry out of so many industries that's there. Maybe because there is this. I think in terms of I mean, yeah, I think it's ultimately like a consumer product company eventually selling to masses, and that whole feel is different. So maybe that's the reason. But anyway, so yeah, with my experience, what happened was that Pidilite was the company that I did my summer internship in, and Pidilite I think came on our campus on the third or the fourth day, which essentially still day zero. That's how we used to call it in our campus. Yeah, and so guys, a lot of that will happen. You will figure out like a lot of days are day zero only, and at least in NM, I think that's how it went. Like at least in the first 3 to 4 days was still day zero. And with Pidlite, the experience was that they have this very interesting thing wherein they make their potential candidates dine. So like there was a setup wherein once we got shortlisted, uh, we were all called to a particular restaurant kind of a space, and there were multiple round tables, with every round table having a moderator, and the moderator will just throw in some particular topic. It's to their wish. It could be related to business, or it could be something which is completely abstract. And I think in my table, the person who was sitting had thrown in some question with respect to the distribution of Fevicol. So everybody then pitches in their viewpoints, and the whole idea, I think, what they really look out like, if you want to be noticed in a group of 10 people sitting and talking, I think what matters is not speaking a lot, but just speaking sense when you're speaking. So I remember there were a couple of people who would speak a lot, and things did not really work out for them, because maybe it can be seen through that you're just trying to desperately create an image, uh, and you don't want the moderator to feel that thing about you. So maybe just if you are in such a setup, try and not really create such an environment wherein you're trying desperately to be perceived in a certain way. Just be natural. At least that's how I tried to keep it, and when I had any inputs, it just worked out. So that is how the interview thing got cracked. And then if I talk about how my internship experience was, so prior to this MBA, like internships are all done in a way wherein you have this thing in your mind, okay, it's just an intern. So now you do some work and then it's fine. Like you don't have to do like the proper business work as such. But I think when you talk about summer internship and MBA, you're taken very seriously in companies. So even if you talk about maybe say the national sales head or the national or the brand manager, and if you are having discussions with them, the kind of questions you have or whatever discussions you have will be almost from an expectation perspective, wherein they think that okay, this guy can come up with something interesting and new, which is really practical and executable at the same time. At least that is what was my major learning, because before that, whatever internships that I had done was always like कि अच्छा ठीक है intern है, जो भी करेगा कर लेगा, and then he can just give in his final viewpoint. But in summer internship, I think your recommendations are taken very seriously, and you work just like any other employee in that particular profile. So that was a major learning for me. And then with again my experience, I was given a lot of free hand in terms of what I wanted to do with my project. I was allowed to basically plan my own travel. I traveled to Surat. I went to Ahmedabad, and I think there were plans to go to south in the southern cities as well, but because of some issue at that point of time I couldn't go there. But yeah, the idea was to do the market research. So okay, I'll just tell you the project that I was doing. So my project essentially involved identifying and the consumption pattern of this particular target audience called hobby professionals. So Pidilite has this range called Fevicryl. I'm sure most of you would have heard of it. And the idea was that Fevicryl wanted to identify this particular group of artists who were not like professional artists as such, but they were somewhere more than hobbyists as well. So you'll find a lot of people who are doing some sort of artwork, and maybe they would want to, create some financial income out of it as well. So and that's a huge chunk in India. So in my project, like for the Fevicryl range, 60% of their target audience were people called the hobby professionals. So my project was around understanding their consumption pattern, understanding what their needs are, so that we can serve to them better in order to have their loyalty over the years. So I did a lot of focus group discussions. I had a lot of one-on-one interviews with a lot of these hobby professionals, and then eventually I came up with my recommendations, and yeah, that's how things worked out with me around my summers. But again, my summer internship was also kind of interesting for me, because that is exactly the same time when we were preparing for our Brandstorm finals as well. I think my finals was in May 17th or May 18th. So getting into that whole hosh posh of coordinating with the placecom and with the company and trying to take a leave for a week, that too in between a 2-month summer internship, that's like what, 1 out of 8, around 12.5% of your summer internship time gone into some particular competition that you want to be a part of, that too a competition for Pidilite. So why would they allow me? But Pidilite was gracious enough, the HR was really nice, they were understanding, my managers were understanding, and they let me do this competition. And a lot of challenges came in, not just in terms of like getting to go, but also in terms of managing the preparation before that 1 week of going. So how my time used to look like is, I, to be very honest, did not want to do a lot of traveling for my summer internship project, because I wanted to sit at one place and try and figure out the competition bit as well. So that is why yeah, I think that's the reason I didn't go to south cities. So anyway, so yeah, that was there. And my days used to be like, I used to start working for Pidilite and then continue working till around 4 or 5, and then I used to go to L'Oreal's office and then sit at their office till around 11 in the night. So it was very weird, because you're going to some office that you want to join in a way, but when you go, all the people are leaving from that office. So it was weird, but yeah, and it got managed. And my team members, like one was Vishaka, she was interning at Reliance at that point of time, so she was sitting out of Navi Mumbai. And then one was Anirudh, and he was interning at VMware, and he was sitting out of Bangalore. So again, coordinating and working at that point of time was a huge challenge. But I think we were just very positive and about this thing. We were very optimistic about getting this competition done. And somehow, to be very honest, we had in our minds that summer internship we'll figure out, dekha jayega kya hota hai kya nahi, but we wanted to win this competition. And that is, I think, what helped us go ahead with respect to the competition. And I think now that I look back, I'm happy that things worked out. So that was my internship. And yeah, I mean, majorly that. And if you talk from a placement committee's perspective, so again, ye abhi tak would they already have had their placement committee interviews and all? No,
No,
right?
no, they've just started applying to these different committees, so they'll have it in maybe the next week.
Yeah, so guys, I think it's a very important time for you to think about whether you really want to join the placement committee or not, because I mean, I
Go
don't
ahead.
know if it's so again, I don't know, but you'll see a lot of people talking about placement committee in different ways. Some will have positive reviews, some will have कि यार placement committee में घुसने से खुद का setting करवा सकते हो आप, and इस इधर उधर companies में you can make your through it way through it. But my perspective, to be honest, is that it is still not very easy. And even if I go by facts, you just take up the entire committee members ka list and look at where all they are placed. You'll not find everybody placed at maybe the kind of companies they would have wanted to
Wanted
get
to.
placed into.
Yeah.
So yeah, take this choice carefully, and just don't have this as your objective कि placement committee में होने से placement easily लग जाती है. Doesn't really work out that way. And agar if I were to talk about how I felt the HRs felt about you being a part of PlaceCom, so to some extent, I think some companies may, when the panel is there, since most of the guys would have gone and joined these companies and must have like done their MBA from some B school, they would know what a placement committee is, and they don't give a lot of importance to it a lot of times. Like maybe you could also get bullied, wherein they're just asking you, why did you even join PlaceCom? And they want to see what your reaction to that is. So it's not a very easy game. And yeah, in terms of how placement committee helped me personally was, I think it gave me a lot of exposure towards this whole B2B kind of an experience. So in terms of like approaching companies and talking to their HRs, setting up meetings, and you're negotiating deals with them wherein you're telling them that you can't offer this low a salary, or you can't offer these profiles, you have to come for so and so profiles. It's an experience. So that was a learning experience for me. But again, a lot of time and effort goes into it, so you need to take a call on whether you want to spend time on placement committees work, or you want to maybe focus on competitions or your lectures, or something around internships, some extra internship that you want to catch up on. So that's a call I think that you would want to take. But luckily, again, a lot of things went wrong from our batch's perspective in terms of how the placement committee thing was happening. And our placement committee was dismantled in the second year. So I wasn't a part of the placement committee in the second year. And I had a pretty good time, I think, in my second year. So yeah,
You
if I
actually
were to be
you
honest.
have actually spilled the beans in the last 2 3 words that you said, that you actually enjoyed your second year where you were not a part of it. But I think, Kushal, because you managed your entire first year and obviously you were selected for the final year PlaceCom, that means you obviously wanted to be a part of the senior committee because you were a part of it, maybe for a brief period of time, but at least you were a part of it. So then why did you continue with it if you were not sure about it, or maybe?
I feel like Arnab Goswami is putting me on spot and asking me all those difficult questions. I don't know, like, so I'll tell you, I still remember I had this final interview, and I think it was one of my seniors. I don't want to name him, but he asked me, what is it that you choose in between L'Oreal and PlaceCom if you were to just choose one? And at that point of time, I think, I don't exactly remember which round of the competition was I in, or how was it exactly like. But yeah, that question was there, and I honestly said them that it was L'Oreal. and and I think maybe they liked it, they liked the honesty
Honesty.
or what, but they chose me. And yeah, I mean, see, again, I hadn't looked at the other side, life outside of PlaceCom, because the moment I joined college, got into PlaceCom and things just happened. But now, especially in the second year when you're relatively freer, um, I think I had the best of both worlds in that sense, because in the first year I slogged for everything, trying to get through into a good summers and be a part of the so-called PlaceCom thing, which everybody keeps talking about, and and at the same time trying for competitions. So the first year turned out to be pretty much busy for me, and then second year I think I mostly just had a good time. Like I was traveling to some extent. I wasn't in fact focusing a lot on competitions and all as well. So I'm happy with the kind of mix that I had in terms of my first and second year experience.
Great. And just on whatever you said, I have two questions. First is, like you mentioned, that Pidilite has a very different process than other FMCG companies with respect to their dine-in experience. So you said there was some topic on GD which was about distribution of Fevicol or something like this.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was
yeah.
the. So what would your approach have been? Maybe now, if you sit for a similar kind of a GD, what points would you make to make sure that you differentiate yourself from the entire people who are sitting on that particular, what do you call that, board or whatever it is, a round table?
See, so again, just before that round, I think for the shortlisting round, what was done was Pidilite had uh, sent a case study to everybody, and it was some, I think, 3 to 4 page case study wherein they had talked about this small town in a particular state and how could Pidilite service that particular market. What would be the logic behind that, and how could you justify the costs? Is what I think the case study was around. And the 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 roundtable discussion was around the same thing. So a lot of other mentors on the other tables did not choose to go ahead with this particular uh, topic. Like they just talked about something other than this maybe. But my mentor was the one who designed this case study for the previous shortlisting round. So naturally he had an inclination to talk about this or discuss this in detail. So he put forward this particular topic. Then in terms of the kind of inputs that you want to talk about, again, I don't know how I fared at that point of time, but right now if I look back and if I would want to maybe give in my bits of experience as to how it should be dealt with, then maybe I would just say have a very practical approach. Don't come up with recommendations which sounds like he in the air or is just hawe mein, doesn't sound practical, or is a lot of is very cost intensive. You want to basically compare what is the revenue that can come out of that particular medium, and maybe your recommendations could be as strong as that we do not service this particular town if you feel that you can't do justice to costs. So go ahead and be bold in giving those answers, but just don't try and come around with recommendations which seem far-fetched. Again, these are some things which are company specific. So if I talk about Pidilite, maybe these wouldn't work. But L'Oreal, if I talk about L'Oreal, so again, the experience that I had with Brandstorm was that they want people who, like, at least with respect to the competition, who sounded very positive about the ideas that they had. And Brandstorm in general was about having visionary ideas, and they did not want to get into a particular technical problem that we are facing in a particular area, in a particular brand. So that is, I think, the difference that the company will bring in. But Pidilite is a very practical, is a very how do I say, like, it's a typical like
Just
धंधा
like
कैसे
Marico.
आएगा, that's the question. Yeah. So I think that's it
Okay.
from that
And
perspective.
yeah, and the last question with respect to your interview is, as you mentioned that you had still mentioned IPCC even though your seniors recommended you to remove it. So were you questioned on that, on those lines in your interview?
Yeah, a lot of times I remember. So Pidilite was also day 3 or day 4, right? So the company that I've sat for before that, uh, they questioned me, and they in fact even told me that you are very flimsical in your thought process. You just want to hop around from here and here to there, and you're not even sure about what you want to do eventually in your life. So how do you expect us to believe that you want to join this company? Like, why do you even want to join this company? So again, I did have answers to like why I chose to get into marketing after having left IPCC. But again, to the other person, they can only sound believable basis what their own mindset is around, what their own thinking is around a particular thing. And secondly, your conviction level in your interview. So if you sound like you're not convinced by yourself, then it doesn't work out. I think conviction was something that maybe worked out for me, because I would literally get too intense if I get asked this question, and then I think the way I spoke about it, maybe that might have clicked. So yeah,
So
that's
like
there.
if suppose there's someone who has exact similar problem like you, would you recommend them to have that thing in their CV mentioned, or would you just ask them to remove it so that they avoid complications in their interviews?
So again, over here, if you have a lot of other good things to put in your PPT anyway, then sorry, in your CV.
CV.
My bad. Yeah. uh, so if you so if that's there, then I think you can definitely do away with a couple of things which might sound a little off with respect to your particular story. But yeah, I mean, I think eventually what matters is that particular story. So my reasons with respect to how I changed my stream was justified. So the senior who was verifying my CV before the summers, he did in fact help me a lot out as well. Like initially he had a issue with it, But then later on, when I told him the reasons, we discussed it, and he also helped me shape that answer, basically in terms of trying to not sound very verbose, but in terms of specifically pointing out why that was a part of my story. So yeah, that's there, because you could have then, I mean, I think I said it in my one of my interviews as well, that I agree that this was a big change that I took, but what if I wouldn't have done it right now, and 10 years down the line I would have felt, that maybe it's not
Guilty.
working out for me, it would have been a bigger mistake. So I can't commit a mistake on a mistake, right? So you just take a call when you feel like it.
Exactly, and I remember this Hindi phrase, which is "Jab jago tabhi savera." So, so probably better late than never. Thank you, Kushal.
Yeah, I guess.
I'll let you rest for a while till Safdar and Shweta also complete their experiences, because you have talked a lot. I've like extracted a lot out of you. So Safdar, you can talk about your experience with Nestle and the other processes that you were a part of.
Okay, sure. So I'll just tell you the difference between the process I went through, because it's autumns vis-a-vis IIMs and other B schools which has summers. The two differences primarily. First is the timing. So for you guys, for everyone else, it happens in the first year, and in fact in the first 3 months of you joining the B school. For STGN students, it happens in the second year. So we get more time. Not that we make a lot out of it, but we get more time. That is the first difference. The second difference is the duration of the placement process. I think in some B schools it's staggered. In some B schools it's stacked in a week. So in my case it was stacked in a week. So it got a little too drilling. I think second third day of the process. These are the two differences, but I think similarities are a lot. First is the shortlisting process. Uh, Personally, I wanted to get into the FMCG space simply because it gives you the maximum area to cover in terms of sales and marketing opportunities. Like there's pricing research, there's shopper marketing, there's trade marketing. You can do sales, hardcore sales. You can become a brand manager. So because of the width and the breadth of the industry, I went for this one. So I applied to approximately 12 or 13 FMCGs, and I had 7 or 8 shortlists, uh, which were GDs. And out of that, I think I had 4 interviews. Out of the 7 GDs I sat for, I had 4 interview calls. And so every year the process changes. In my case, it was GDs on one day and interviews on the other day. So you sit for like 10, 12, 8, 9 GDs in a day, and then you get your interview calls, and next day you have to sit for only interviews. So that's how it happened in my year. Out of the 4 interviews I had planned, I gave 3. Nestle's result came out before I sat for the fourth one. So, and Nestle was top of my priority list. So I took it. So that was the thing. Coming to selection process, I think all B schools have this common template that there'll be a form floated by the placement cell. Then sometimes you also have the company sending you the same form because they want data in their Excel probably. So there's placement cell forms, then there's company forms. Then some companies have psychometric tests. For example, Pidilite had one. I remember there are a few more FMCGs who have psychometric tests. Personally, I did not fare well in any of the psychometric. For some reason, I would not clear them. Probably because I took a lot of time answering them, and you're not supposed to do that because there's a timer also which they check. So if you probably cross a certain threshold, it does not get evaluated, something of that sort. So then there's psychometric test. Then there's this online aptitude test, which has become the rage in the COVID era. Pre-COVID, some FMCGs had psychometrics. Some FMCGs had aptitude tests, but I think from this year onwards, I think a lot of them will have it. That's my prediction, because there's no way you can evaluate a GD virtually. So if you really want to check someone's way of thinking, or how sharp they are, I think aptitude test is a good way to go about. It's mostly logical reasoning, the nature of the aptitude test. You crack that, you have the GD, traditional GD of 12 people sitting in. I sat for the 7 GDs I had. I think mostly they ask questions with regard to, since I sat for FMCG GDs, I had questions regarding the sales structure. So there'll be a case where they'll tell you that this has happened and you're the ASM. How will you tackle this? So the distributors are having an issue with the app that you have launched, and you want most of them to use the app because then you can track your sales. So how will you manage that? Generally, 1 to 2 pages is what I have seen. Sometimes you have a 3 or a 4 pager also. They give you like 5 minutes or 2 minutes in some cases to read and then go about it. AP is the only Asian Paints is the only other company which probably asks an abstract topic. It'll give you something like a pink or something like ABCD, and you have to talk about it. It can be a quote. It is the only one which stands out in my experience. Other than that, almost all of them go for case based GDs, and then you clear that, you have the interview. Some companies have two interviews. They have an HR specific interview, and then they have a general interview in which they ask about the role and stuff, which is sometimes technical. So that is a selection procedure. Sadly, in my experience, and I've seen that with my senior batch also, there's no secret sauce for a shortlist. There's no way you can ensure that, if you put these in your CV, you will definitely get a shortlist. So that does not happen. I know friends who sat and analyzed, okay, if these 15 people got their shortlist, let's see their CV. What was the common thing? There hasn't been a trend, at least not in the FMCG space. I can assure you that much. Okay? Not in summers. So that's not there. Some see the 999. If you're 999 in class 10, class 12, and your undergrad, you get a shortlist. Some don't do it. Some HRs genuinely go through your CV, so that is also a very nice thing which some of them do. Uh, some get it for their work ex. The thing is, some companies are honest enough to tell you that, what, we want people with work experience for 2 years, and then only you can apply. So if you don't have that you cannot apply. But some companies don't do it, and then you figure that out on your own later. I remember I had a shortlist from Amazon. Ecom was my backup, but the interviews happened earlier, before the FMCG interviews, and there are two interviews. I cleared both of them, and there are 15 people waiting for the internship offer. I think 3 or 4 people did not get it, and all of them were freshers. That was the only common thing among them. And the people they picked all had hardcore B2B sales experience. So here are 10, 12 people who have hardcore B2B sales experience who got accepted. Basically, it took out of the marketing back. All the B2B sales people are going to Amazon, and then you have the freshers. So I think if they had told us earlier that, you should not be applying if you don't have the requisite work ex, it would have been nice. But again, companies differ that way. So this was my experience with the entire selection process. uh, Coming to interview questions, I think the mainly three types of interview questions. Number one is technical. So they'll ask you role based questions. So if you are shortlisted for a sales and marketing role, they'll ask you questions like go-to-market strategy. They'll probably give you a case in the interview about go-to-market strategy or a brand architecture. They'll ask you your favorite brand, and they'll tell you to break down the campaign in terms of the objective and the outcome. They'll make you write positioning statement. I remember Nestle's interview was the most technical interview I sat for. There were like 5 mini case studies. One was on Maggie, one was on Saffola, one was on Parachute, and one was uh, on my project from a CV. And at one point, the person gave me a sheet of paper and my pen and a pen. He's like, "Safdar, write the positioning statement for Maggie." Took me 2 attempts to get that right, but stuff like that also happens. So that is as technical as it can get. But then there are HR questions and opinion-based questions where they can ask you about uh, what is your take on India's reaction to COVID. What is your take on feminism? Stuff like that, stuff that which is opinion-based, but they're probably trying to see how you think. And HR questions are very cliched. I think I remember solving PNG 64 for that. Uh, so, what is your strength? What is your weakness? One incident from your CV where you showed leadership skills, and the all-time favorite question: where do you see yourself in 5 years? I mean, there's no interview which is complete without that question from the HR, right? So that was one thing. Then sometimes there are case studies also which are guesstimates. So I think it mainly happens for consulting and general management roles, but in some marketing interviews also, I know my friends got a few case studies and guesstimates to solve. So I think these are the three broad type of interview questions you can get. Personally, I prepared. I think I took like one month out to prepare for before the placements happened. So I got my CV thoroughly checked with the seniors. In fact, people who had a similar background as me, people who had a commerce background and no work ex, basically freshers. So I went to them, and I knew I asked for their shortlists. So that was a good thing I did, I think, in terms of getting my CV vetted. Had almost 10 or 12 reiterations with them, 2 3 people, I think that with 2 3 seniors. Uh, they told me, they gave me a very good advice. They told me to create a Word doc, and all the CV pointers that I had, they told me to prepare a short version and a long version for that. So if you want me to talk about one point in 60 seconds in the interview, I should have a short version, and I should also have a lengthier version if they want to question me on that. So that is one thing I did for every CV point. I had a short version and a long version, 30 second and a 2 minute version. So that worked out well, because in some interviews, as for the same point, I was told to speak in 30 seconds, and for others, it was a full-fledged conversation. We do a lot of projects. I'm not sure how many of you who have summers will be able to do projects in the initial 3 months. But if you have projects from your undergrad or engineering projects, and so just make sure that you have a project folder where you've kept the files. Just one day before the interview, it just makes sense going through the PPTs or the docs. That's one thing I did, because I had 8 9 projects by the time I completed my first year, which I mentioned in my CV. So I think that is one thing which played out well. PNG 64 is like the holy grail for HR questions. Um, I also prepared an introduction for 55 seconds. I have to time it. I made sure it's 55 seconds, because the moment you exceed 1 minute, people tend to lose attention. So I think a good introduction is very vital. Sometimes an entire interview went just discussing what I said in the introduction. So that is also a thing. If you guys can get your hands on the interview transcripts of your seniors, that's nothing like it, because honestly, companies are lazy when they come and hire. They like recycling material. So I know in my time, 3 4 giants, MNCs, use the same case study for GDs which they gave to a senior batch. People who went through those interview transcripts had a cakewalk. They were just hitting points after points, and the other people who hadn't gone through were still thinking. Okay, so I think these are little cheats, little hacks that sometimes work well. Uh, you should always have your favorite brand from every company you're applying for, and you should also have some options which are from a different category. So if I remember, in a Nestle interview, they asked me for my favorite brand, and they said, "Don't name a Maggie or a Kit Kat, because we don't want you to oil us," something like that. So I had to say something in which does not directly compete with Nestle. So I remember saying a Saffola, because Nestle is not into oils. So I think having an Excel where you have your most favorite brands and the campaigns why they are your favorite is a good way to go about it. And last thing that I did was I went through the company website, and in some cases, if when I had time, I went through the annual report. The first 4 or 5 pages of an annual report is very vital, because it has whatever the company did in a snapshot. It has something called the CEO address. So the CEO addresses the shareholders, and he tells you what happened to this company in the last 1 year. So I think if you have if it's your dream company, just go through that one page, know what the CEO said. I think it impresses them, because I don't think a lot of people do this. So that is one thing. Overall, the experience was a little difficult, because there are too many things lined up back to back, and other people start getting offers, and you're not getting offers. You're thinking, so it even if it's just like a gap of 1 hour, for that 1 hour, it's in your head. But you know what? I think I was better than this person or that person, and he's getting an offer. I'm not getting an offer. Something like that. Stuff like that happens. I just feel it's a very cliche thing to say, but I think it's very important to be positive at that time. And when I joined Nestle, I think my internship, if I come to that, internship was pretty good. I was working in the nutrition business to Cerelac, basically. I think people will get an idea. So basically, nutrition is makes lactogen, Cerelac, Ceregro, all these baby food brands. And I was working for Ceregro Organic Selection. That was my brand, and it was launched in April, and I joined in August. So I had to launch an e-commerce kit and a packaging kit. So I had to design 2 kits. Uh, an e-commerce kit will sell specifically on, say, an Amazon or a First Cry. So, for example, Nescafe has those kits with mugs, or there's a cold coffee kit. Similarly, I had to make one for Cerebro Organic Selection, which is baby food, and then I had to make a sampling kit, which will be given as a sample in malls for awareness drives. So I had a really good team. It was a desk job. Unlike Kushal, I didn't have that much fun exploring the country. But yeah, I was able to deliver both of them, and the little small things I did which worked out in my favor. Like I ensured if the HR said 10 slides for a deck for a mid review, it was 10 slides, stuff like that. And yeah, it turned out really well. Nestle, as like L'Oreal, does not give you a PPO; it will give you a PPI. Uh, with Nestle, there are two PPIs. You get one HR PPI, and then there's one technical PPI, in which one of the business heads will ask you questions about sales and marketing. So I think both of them went down well. It was a little stressful, but I think that's how they conduct their interviews. Uh, so yeah, and Touchwood cracked both, and currently working as a management trainee in the sales and marketing function. I'm working. My marketing stint is on right now, so I am working on a brand launch, which is scheduled for some time in the future. So that's it. I think if
Yeah,
you have
that
anything.
was yeah, that was actually a very great summary of the experience that you had with respect to placement. So again, some follow-up questions would be just like you said that there's no hack, there's no secret sauce to probably finding out what gets you a shortlist at an FMCG brand. But like one thing which you pointed was like suppose an e-commerce brand like Amazon came and it was just taking people who had say 2 years or 3 years of work experience in B2B, and they obviously rejected all the freshers. That means at least this is one of the criteria which you can identify. Maybe not from a CV point of view, but when you see your friends or maybe someone who's applying for a company not getting shortlisted or maybe just getting rejected just by because that person is a fresher, that is something
Mhm.
which clicks into your mind. Ki, theek hai, this is a criteria for say e-commerce brands, maybe Amazon, Flipkart. So was it similar across? I mean, for e-commerce companies because I'm pretty sure that if in fact even Flipkart visits the campuses. So was it like Flipkart
Mhm.
also had this particular thing in mind that only we hire B2B people, or was it like they were open for freshers?
No, I think the thing is very few companies are honest and forthright enough to come and tell you that we will not take you if you don't have 2 years of work ex or 1 year of work ex.
Mhm.
Other companies have their ways of finding out, like a Flipkart or say a media net will give you a case study. They'll give you a product management case study. And if you crack it, even if you don't have the work ex, but you're smart enough to like crack it, you'll get a you'll get a call. So some companies are honest enough to tell you that we you can't, like a Microsoft specifies that if you don't have 2 years of work experience, you cannot apply for the company. But for the others, it's mostly either case studies or in retrospect, you can figure out. I personally, it's not a good idea to figure it out in retrospect, just go on with the flow. But yeah, it's not very black and white for most companies, unfortunately.
Okay, great. But say as a fresher, I mean, have you seen people like in Nestle itself or maybe other FMCG brands? Did you see people with 2+ years of work experience getting shortlisted and then getting selected as well? Like, is do these FMCG companies have a notion in general, maybe just majority wise?
Okay, so some FMCGs are such that if you get into them, will definitely start with a sales role. Some give you the option of, if you have work experience, you can start from brand or marketing right away. And Asian Paints, if you have the relevant work experience, will let you join. If you're 26, 27, you have 3 years of work experience. They'll shortlist you. They'll let you become a brand manager from the moment your empty stint ends. Okay, but
Okay.
most FMCGs want to train the people with a sales experience and ASM role for 2-3 years. So I think that is one reason why a lot of people with 2-3 years of work experience do not get a shortlist. But then there are companies making exceptions, like a Pidilite or an AP, sometimes HUL, PNG also. In some cases, they do shortlist people with 2 years of work experience. It gets tough when you don't have relevant work experience. So if there's a hardcore IT guy who comes in with an IT work experience in a Cisco, it is I think it's a 50-50 call. Some companies will not give it, some companies will. Coming to Nestle, I think there are like 11 sales and marketing management trainees which joined this year. The age bracket is 23 to 27, which is a wide age bracket, and there are a lot of people with work experience. I think half of the sales and marketing trainees are having work experience of at least 1.5-2 years. So it's not that it's a no. Uh, if you don't get a shortlist, there's no way out. But if you get a shortlist, it means you have a shot. So I think That's what it is about. Some FMCG series will just not give you a shortlist, but I don't think you can help that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Safdar. So we'll just move on to Shweta now. So Shweta, you can talk about your experience with respect to summers, then your Vodafone interviews, and then again when you switch to EY.
Okay. So, hi guys. I think Safdar and Kushal has already summarized, and I think I am the eldest one here in terms of passing out MBA. So, Safdar must be like very fresh in terms of summers and converting his PPI to PPO. But nonetheless, unlike both of them, I was not, I will be very honest that I was not placed on day zero or the first week. I had to struggle through my summers as well as my final placements. I think one of the reasons for it was because I was being a little choosy. So when we say little choosy, I got placed in the fourth week of summers and subsequently like fourth week of my finals as well. Because in NMIMS we have a recurring placement, unlike the like the only a week for the placement
Ivy League
schedule.
colleges.
Yeah. So in terms of a summer internship, I think I was only when you say, I think being like marketing, you have that only apply to FMCG, FMCG. So I was being that choosy, but frankly, I was not getting shortlist because maybe my profile was somewhat IT aligned. I did get a shortlist from Deloitte during my summers, and I even managed to crack the interview as well. So during the interview, it was my last round, and the interviewer actually said that yeah, you are selected. But then after grilling into the profile, I got to know that this is something I do not work because it was do not want to work for, because it was something aligned to risk advisory. And then and there I actually said no to the interviewer that I do not want to work for it. And he was happy because he said okay, you are being honest that you do not want to work for it. And then the struggle continued for another 3 weeks because Deloitte actually comes in the first week itself. And I continued, and I think I cleared Henkel. So Henkel, the interview process was pretty simple. I remember at that time it was the craze of demonetization, so the GD topic was revolving something around demonetization itself. So as said that GD topics can revolve around all the three criterias. It can be abstract, any abstract topic. It could be the case study related to the kind of company you are applying for it. So it could be a marketing case study, or if you're applying for a finance company or any of the consulting companies, it could be a guesstimates. In terms, and the third category is generally the general topics, the current affairs, that could be in the GD topics. So these three things you should be well versed when you're preparing for your summers. I think as Kushal mentioned that a lot of people will come and say to you that if you shout in your GD and if you uh, be aggressive, you will be able to clear the GD, especially in FMCG. But I think that's not true at all. So one thing you should make yourself very clear that you have to keep a point, a valid point in the GD, and make yourself noticed, rather than bragging that okay, yeah, this can happen, this can happen. I'm telling you, this won't fly in the GDs because uh, in my experience, I think I've given the interviews, like I've shifted from Vodafone to EY also. One thing you can, like people will say, fake it till you make it. It doesn't happen that way. So trust me, there are people sitting with almost more than 7 to 8 years of experience. There are people, especially there are CXOs, sometimes the people, MDs of the companies who are coming to hire there people with 20 years of experience, and they know when you're faking it. So they know their industry, they know their genre. So don't bullshit around them. That is the key thing. uh, and I have also learned that hard way. Trust me, I when I because a lot of seniors, like sometimes they come and say be aggressive in the GDs. That doesn't help. So in interview, I think interview again it was 2 rounds of interview. One was HR and one was technical. And as HR is pretty straightforward, so same as Safdar, I also prepared a Word document that was a very comprehensive 8 to 10 pages of Word document, wherein I wrote all my answers, how to, and I had a star format for my answers. So you can like whatever format suits you, just prepare that answer in that format, and that helps you to be structured when you're answering the questions. So HR interview would be pretty straightforward if you're structured in your answer, and they are very cliched questions like your weakness, your strengths, your what leadership experience in your college times, and all those questions. I think in during the technical interview, they asked me around the they did ask me some of the finance questions. So if you are thinking that in a marketing interview they might not ask, because in the first year you do have some of finance subject that are common across the board. So they did ask me some questions around the profitability, budgeting. So if you're thinking that you are sitting for a marketing interview, the questions will be aligned to sales and marketing. That might not happen, because I believe they so I'll come to why they were asking me finance questions. So my project was actually revolving around the strategy, marketing strategy. I was not visiting the markets. I was not planning any travels like Kushal and Safdar. So I was actually sitting in the office. My office was in the Washi. So in terms of Henkel, I don't know how many of you are aware about. So Henkel is an FMCG company that is based out of Germany. It is actually the biggest company in terms of chemical and consumer goods. And it deals basically in 3 products: adhesives, beauty care, laundry, and home care. So I was assigned to the adhesives unit, and I was particularly working in their adhesive laminates. So that was my project. I actually worked on 2 projects. One was around their direct customers, and one was with their distributors. So I was working on their distributor portfolio analysis for their channel management, and the other one was to eliminate some of their direct customers which were not having the profitability. So they wanted me to have some finance knowledge, and that is why they asked me some of the questions. So it isn't, I think, really like I again so I think internship went quite well, but in our year Henkel did not offer any PPI or PPOs. So again I had to sit for the final process. uh, and now I look at at that time it was quite frustrating to every day come dress in formals and sit for the companies. But I think it was quite useful experience in long term. So yeah, that is it. In terms of preparation, I think right now, uh, all I being also being the part of placement committee for quite long. I was being a part of placement committee for 8 months. So I think that is not true that you get any favors or something. I am being the perfect case. So I got placed in 4th week. It's not true. I'll tell you the benefits of being in a placement committee. It's not in terms of shortlist, or it's not in terms of getting selected for committees. I think the benefit is in terms of mentorship. So in placement committee, I would say, in at least in my college, the benefit is that you get one-to-one mentorship with the place commerce, and you can actually go and talk to them. They can conduct your mock interviews, and because they are in direct touch with HRs, so they might be little bit aware about the requirements or the kind of profile, because they are actually shortlisting the profile which are going to come to the campus. They are getting the JDs. So in that way it might be helpful to you, because they might help you to prepare the kind of specific questions. I think that is the only help. But apart from this, I don't think so that shortlist, because at the end of the day it's your choice where you want to go. Even if you say that they can't help you. Maybe the G's company is coming on the campus and you say, I want to go to G, that doesn't work. HR is not going to say, okay, you are a place comer, okay, I'll take take you into G. That is not going to happen. So let's be assured. So yeah, that I think that pretty much summarizes my summer experience. Yeah.
Okay, Shweta, one question which has come up is, how did you convert EY from a marketing background? I mean, how did you get into
Okay.
consulting from, say, sales that you might be doing, or strategy that you might be doing for Henkel, and for Vodafone you were doing some digital automation profile that you
Yeah.
were into. So how did you get into EY and then switch it entirely?
Okay. So, I got placed with Vodafone Shared Services. So, Vodafone Shared Services is not particularly a part of Vodafone India. They are actually the partner markets and local markets. I was working with Vodafone Group. So when we say Vodafone Group, we were working with the markets like Vodafone Spain, Germany, UK, and how did I manage to convert it? Because I was not particularly working in sales and marketing. I was mostly working in the digital automation consulting and when we say services marketing. So I was not aligned to any product per se. I was that is where it helped me to convert into consulting because I was actually working as a in processes. So when we say processes, I was doing a process consulting. We were looking at the various enterprises and marketing processes. And talking about even my current profile in EY, it's not purely because in consulting, although in Big Four we do not have like when we say we do not have positions such as marketing manager or something like that. We have generally consultants, senior consultants, then manager, ads and partner and so on. As a responsibility as my senior consultant, I'm doing process consulting. I am also working as a consultant to analyze a few of the processes for the various clients which we have been assigned to. And apart from this, we are also doing business development in our particular domain. So I work with you will be surprised so I work with supply chain management in data and analytics. That is quite drastic shift. But when we say supply chain management, I need to have a knowledge of supply chain management, but I do not implement anything over there. So I just need to convert few of the clients. That is again a marketing work. So that is a difference between the two. But yeah, I do need to have a knowledge of what is happening in data and analytics in supply chain management. I think what uh, why my profile in EY is aligned because uh, when I had an interview with a partner, uh, I asked that what is why you are hiring me. I'm very I'm very very frank in that way. I think he said that because he wants someone who can do marketing. Plus, my IT background from my college did help me. So unlike like I because I was not shifting very drastically. So my because in Accenture also I was working as a business analyst. So all in all, my previous background helped me. Even my project during Henkel, because it was revolving around marketing strategy. So I never did any sales per se, apart from doing my live projects or the corporate projects, which we say. I never did any sales per se. I have always worked in the strategy or marketing strategy or consulting domain. So my profile is quite aligned in terms of what I have been doing so far.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Shweta. After having discussed about your experiences, I mean, rich experiences that you guys have with respect to your summers and different stories that you have put in, we'll just get into some sort of valuable advice that you guys might have for the people who are joining this year, for the students who are joining different colleges this year. Because obviously, because of whatever has happened in the past few months, the most affected companies are marketing companies, because sales is something which has not been happening. People have not been able to go to ground level and probably execute a lot of stuff like as I mean talking to distributors and other things. So I mean, how do you see the shift this year with respect to some summers that these people might be having? Do you see the similar sort of maybe profiles which these companies will be coming, or maybe some companies might just not be in a position to visit these campuses, just like maybe some couple of startups which generally come to these companies and are actually dream companies for certain so for certain students, like you can talk about Oyo, you can talk about Swiggy, because these are actually tough times for these startups. So, how do you see this entire thing shaping up for, I mean, more marketing students this summer, and then any sort of preparation advice that you might have for them? Like most of you mentioned that you guys had your CVs screened from your seniors as to what sort of questions can I be asked in my interview, and I mean, on the basis of that you prepared. So, what would be your take on this? I mean, I can start again from Kushal.
See, again, I don't have a lot of specifics with respect to how many companies will come this year, but definitely going by the normal sentiment, I can. I mean, it's. I mean, I think all of you would agree in the sense that it could be difficult this year because, for instance, if I talk about L'Oreal right now, so we've been running on a hiring freeze for the last I think since March 22nd or 3rd, almost since the whole national lockdown started. And we've been on a global hiring freeze since then. So a lot of companies will, change a lot of their policies and it might get difficult. So one, I think, key suggestion, which again from my experience as well, I would say is that summer internship is very, very, very important. So, you know, try and slog a lot in the first couple of months and try and learn a lot, try and do a lot of value addition. I think somebody was asking in the chat as well some time ago if they should do live projects and whether they help. So it's not about, whether a particular project will help you or not, but it's just that, if it helps you weave a better story, if it can become a better talking point, and if you think you can do some interesting work or get some interesting work, then why not? And try and get as much as you can to maybe have an edge over your batchmates from that perspective, because it's going to get difficult for you. And honestly, again, I don't think we can have any suggestions for you for this particular batch in specific, because your challenges are so new that none of us have seen it before. So I would just maybe suggest you to, at an independent individual level, try and recognize what are some of the things which you want or which you recognize are big elements, and try and just wave around that or try to find out means to deal with that, because it is challenging and it's going to be very, very challenging. That's something that I feel is there.
Mhm. So, I mean, how would you suggest maybe a fresher to prepare for the summer interviews? I mean, what should they do? Like Safdar mentioned, this one PNG 64, which is covering, I mean, which covers the entire gamut of HR questions. So, what would you suggest them to do maybe differently? Because I mean, there have been a lot of people who have been doing some live projects, like you mentioned that there were people who were putting it on the chat. That they're doing these live projects from startups which have just started. Like these are not even known. So do these things actually help? Like some people are doing it from a social organization which is not known by maybe the companies which come to hire, and obviously the role which they're giving is mostly revolving around socially fundraising, then cold calling, and maybe converting some clients. Is it helpful at
Yeah.
all in your profile? Does it add any value? Or maybe because if everyone does it, if suppose there's a batch of 100 people and 20, 30 people have it, then how does it make a difference? How does this make you stand out from the batch? So can you elaborate something on those lines? Can you throw some light on that?
So yeah, I think over here it kind of gets a little situational, maybe, because it will depend on the kind of project and the kind of company that you do this live internship under. I think one potential means is, I think today, since LinkedIn is already like a very vast and almost like an updated network of people, so maybe everybody could potentially from time to time just look at just surf on LinkedIn basically and look for people, reach out to brand managers and drop in a message that, I'm from so and so college and I'm willing to do a particular internship or something in a particular space. Again, the rate of success would be less than 2% or 3%. If you maybe talk to 50 people, maybe one or two of them will reply positively. But given the circumstances now, I would maybe urge you to try that out. And secondly, if you've got your own personal references, if you've got seniors or somebody from your own personal network that you can talk to and get a project, then that will also help. And I think it's natural, the bigger the name of the company that you work with and the better the kind of work that you do will help you. So try and aim for a better in both these perspectives, and then just work your way through it.
Mhm. And again, last thing, Kushal, is about certifications. That do these certifications add any sort of value for marketing people? Obviously, for finance, it might, because it's a bit technical and there are other aspects also involved in it. But for marketing, do these certifications actually help? Like you might be knowing about certain free certifications that are available from Google. So maybe the digital marketing certification or maybe AdSense, AdWords. Do these actually help? Is it recommended for marketing students from a value add point of view?
So again, I remember in our batch, a lot of people, like even after having had their discussions with the seniors, and again, it's a little psychological. So what I'm trying to say is that they didn't have a lot of content to put on their CVs. Now a CV is an A4 sheet, but if there's a lot of space, then the first impression that maybe the interviewer gets is कि अरे कुछ किया ही नहीं है क्या? So from that perspective, then maybe you want to put in a couple of certifications which could help you take some space as well, and you want to put in things that you can be questioned upon. If you think you don't have a lot of those things, then I think these certifications make sense. But again, as you said, some of them have become like really general and mass certifications. Like this Google AdWords certification is something that you can maybe do in a couple of days, and so try and not do one of these. Maybe take up something specialized, like for instance, I don't know if General Assembly has free tests specifically, but again, they have their certified marketing tests. They call it CM1, CM2, and it goes like that. If somebody could maybe crack in those, then it helps. They've got their digital marketing tests as well. So General Assembly is a global company which schedules, which basically has such tests. And like in L'Oreal, a lot of weightage is given to those tests. So I think if you have that in your CV, a company like L'Oreal would definitely notice it. Again, I don't know about a lot of other companies, but try and maybe pick up those tests or certifications which could give you an extra mile. And not one of those cliche ones, but maybe something in specific which is really good and popular.
Okay. And as you mentioned, like when did this L'Oreal competition start for you? Like from the first round itself, when did you start preparing, and when did it end? And when did you actually prepare in your first competition? When was it? Was it in your first trimester, second trimester, third trimester? When did you start?
So this was what we, I think, joined our campuses around July
June.
first week or June.
June.
So yeah, so we joined in June, and the company had come down. I mean, the competition's announcement was done somewhere in October, and that is when we enrolled for it. So around like 3 to 4 months into MBA, and that competition was rolled out. And then I think our first submission ka deadline was 31st of December. And I
Yeah,
remember, I
I
think I was on
remember
a
it too.
vacation. Yeah, so in fact, I had gone down to Rajasthan with a couple of my NM friends only. We'd gone down for a vacation, and the two of us who were in the same team in the competition were together. So we were like, "Ki chalo, theek hai, koi nahi, we'll figure out in the trip." And we literally like kind of spoiled the mood of our friends because we did not go to any place. And for the last 3 days, like starting from the 29th, we were just sitting in one particular hostel and working on the competition ka submission. So that is when it started. Then again, because there was a lot of levels to it, like from the campus round, then there was this regional round wherein the company came, and so for Brandstorm they had these regional rounds wherein for West is where we had this competition, right? We had SP Jain was there, then there was NM, then there was SIBM Pune as well. I think SCMHRD, then a couple of other B schools were also there. And then likewise they'd done it for the other regions as well. Then after the regionals, after a couple of months, we had our national finals. Again, what I think that was somewhere in March or
February.
something, and then the international finals in May. So it went around for like a good 7 month period, so to say, is what I can say. Like starting from the first scratch of campus submissions to the international finals.
Mhm. And what kind of competitions do you suggest these people to participate in? Is it like a competition which offer a PPI or a PPO, because that will be like a better one to maybe put your efforts into, rather than say competitions which are just for the sake of it, maybe just for getting bullet points or something for your CV. So what would you suggest? A person should invest more time in say competitions which have PPIs, or maybe other competitions also have that much of value add?
So again, I think this is a personal call. Like I think you can choose whether you want to be everywhere, or you want to be at one or two places but focus too much on that. So when I think we were doing brainstorm, we'd gone all gun blazing. So like technically it is advised that you diversify and you try out in a lot of places, but we did not do that. I still, I think, took participation in a lot of other competitions as well, but did not wholeheartedly work for it. Eventually, I'd come down to a point wherein I'd stopped applying to other competitions because I wanted to be focused in brainstorm. And I think naturally, for companies offering a PPI and a PPO in the setup that this particular batch will be in, it's natural to have an inclination to work hard in those competitions. And I think it's right also do that. But I'm just in fact even curious or suspicious about, I don't know how many companies would have similar policies around PPO PPI after case study competitions as well. So that could also be something that would change. And then the number of people that they're looking at hiring from this particular channel is also something that could change. But yeah, naturally, if somebody is claiming that they're offering a PPI PPO, then I think those are the competition that from if you're really and obviously like most of the people will be, so if placement is the thing that you're looking at, then you could do that. And if on a short term you are really adamant about proper learning, then you choose basis the case study that is rolled out by a particular company.
Mhm. Thank you, Kushal. That actually answers a lot of questions. Safdar, I'll just come to you now as to what these people should do. I mean, I think you answered on the PNG 64 part on the chat. So could you just help them on how can a fresher prepare for say their summer interviews if they are targeting FMCG companies, or you also mentioned that maybe IT was your backup, like in IT
e-commerce.
companies, e-com, something like that. So could you just throw some light on that?
Sure. So coming to preparation for, I think this is one thing I need to clear at the very start is if you're a fresher, it's not a disadvantage because FMCGs want you because they can mold you by giving you 2 years or 3 years of sales exposure. So it's a plus point if anything. Okay, I know friends in my school who had 3 years of work ex and they had 2 out of 10 shortlists for FMCGs. Okay, so that's the first thing. Secondly, they will not expect you to know a lot of things. Okay, but you need to know your basics. Okay, so I'm not sure if you'll have a marketing management course in the first 3 months, but if you can read some of these, like if you can read a bit of Kotler, if you understand the 4 Ps, segmentation, targeting, positioning, if you understand the very basics and mechanics of marketing well, it's enough for you to at least crack interviews. Also, Nestle was the only interview which was technical in nature. The other interviews about Marico, Mondelez, all of them were non-technical or they were based on my CV. So they took up a marketing project from my CV, and then they asked me questions on it. So they were asking me things I should be knowing already because it's on the piece of the paper, right? So don't expect them to ask you the CMO's name of an MNC. And if you don't answer it, you won't get it. It's not like that. They'll ask you stuff which you should be knowing. And sometimes if you don't know a question, I've said this a few times. I've said, sir, I'm not aware. I'm sorry. And that works out well. Apart from that, I think you should keep reading. I think two very good source of knowledge is brand equity. That this is app called Brand Equity. That's one app which I use extensively. I still use it. So you know what's happening in the marketing domain as of now. Second thing is yeah, you need a business newspaper, you need a Business Standard or an Economic Times. Okay, so you also need to know overall what's happening in the business. Okay, so I think these two are very good sources of learning. If you do these two really well, I think it should be smooth. And of course, you need to know your CV. Whatever is on your CV, you need to know that really well. So I think
So,
the
Yeah, Kushal.
Safdar,
Yes.
I'm just sorry. I'll just cut you. Like, I don't want to forget this point. I'll just say one thing with respect to the same point that you're addressing. In terms of something to read, then a particular app or a publishing house that I follow is The Ken. And they are also brilliant in terms of some of the articles that they write. It's, I think you've got to pay something around 33,
3,000
35
3,000 approximately annually.
for a year's subscription. Yeah, but they've got brilliant reads. Like they're every day they'll have one single article to talk about, and that article will be around a 10 to 20 minute read, depending on how intense or how deep that particular article is going. But the way they go ahead is, they pick up a particular topic or a particular company or a particular situation, and then they deep dive into it. So it's like with a lot of data points. So you can actually, so from a logical perspective, how does a marketer or how a brand manager or an area sales manager think about is something that you can really have a good grab upon if you start reading this. And I think I completely agree with Safdar on the brand equity bit. These are, I think, some of the great houses to read stuff from.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if you
Great.
guys are subscribing a lot to that particular channel, let me know. I'll just drop in a message to the CEO to just kidding.
I
Just
think
kidding, but yeah, that's a great
He's
place to
marketing. He's already marketing. True marketing.
I think it's one app which some alums from IMA launched called FinShots. It was supposed to be for finance people, but I think of late they have made it more about business. So they'll explain you concepts like why the oil price was negative. So I think that's also a one app which I've been using. I think it's a good one. Like if you
I
can
actually follow
afford
it.
to
I
have
I
this.
personally use it.
So that's what I was saying. I think these sources are very rich in terms of knowledge. You don't need to always crunch numbers or crack cases to get into an FMCG. Honestly, they don't. The good part about summers or autumns is, at least pre-COVID, they would take you simply if they see a culture fit. Okay. So they'll take you and then they have 2 months to test how good you are, right? You claim to be very good with digital marketing, then give you a digital marketing project, see how good you are. And then it's not in finals, things get far more technical because they're offering you a full-fledged role. You'll become an employee of the company. For internship, that liability they don't have. So they're willing to experiment with you. If you do good enough, even if you're decent enough in your interview, even if you don't have like a mammoth knowledge about marketing, they'll be willing to experiment with you because the right to give you a pre-placement offer lies still with them. So I think summers is a relatively less stressful uh, time from the perspective of getting into an FMCG.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Safdar. Yes, Shweta, if you could throw some light on what they should be doing at this moment in the next couple of months for preparing for their interviews.
I think being in the industry now and I have seen the trend shifting towards the digital. So, in terms of offer, when we say what would be the offer coming in terms of consulting, I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of focus on data and analytics. So, like we all are very averse to learn the new languages like data visualization or so like digital. Somebody who wants to go into the core FMCG, they are literally averse with whether we should run digital marketing or not. I think this year it would be the companies would be focusing on a lot of digital. So it's I think it's in. I'm not talking about certification per se, but I think you should be aware about the concept, or you should pick one of the other skill from particularly FMCG, like in terms of digital marketing or maybe data analysis or something like that, or marketing analytics, because in a long run it would be helping you, because there will be some of the companies which might come for a digital marketing profile. I think a lot of FMCG companies are going to itself shift their focus into these fortes. So that is one thing I would suggest that everybody should learn. And given the fact that we all are like working from home and you all are studying from home, so you have got a lot of time at your hand, and you should utilize that until your campuses resume. that is one thing I would advise each one of you. And the other thing, in terms of reading the sources, I used to generally read the ET marketing. Apart from this, which I tell, ET marketing I obviously used to read while I was in college. But one source which I really like is medium.com. So I think they have specifically categorized everything. So if you want to learn particularly about data analytics, you can go and follow that blog. If you want to learn about marketing, you can follow that blog. So it's I'll give you a hack. So generally it's free, but after 3 or 4 articles they start charging you. So you can actually go into incognito mode and read those articles. So that is one of the tips. But I think now they have changed their interface, so even in the incognito mode you can't read it. So I think it's very cheap. It's $5 a month, and I think $50 for a year. So I really like that medium. To read articles, that is one. And in terms of like going through the videos, I really like how vox.com is another source which I follow. They really like CNBC and Vox on YouTube. These are the two channels I follow. So they tell about how the brands have evolved during the time, which brands have actually failed in particular countries. So these things, because some people are not very into reading, so they can just go and watch videos. These help you to bring pointers during your group discussion. So these are the three, four mediums which I generally follow. Apart from, obviously, I do like reading as well. So I keep on reading marketing books and the startup, basically the story of the startups founders and all.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. So after having covered, I mean, preparation strategies and the experiences that you guys have had, probably the last thing that's left with respect to summer internships happens to be, I mean, how do you convert once you are into your dream company, or maybe a company which you might not have maybe aspired to. I mean, everyone has a specific brand in mind where they want to get placed into, but if not that, maybe something which is as good as that brand. If you just make maybe suppose get placed in something of that sort, how do you make sure that you convert it into a PPO? I mean, what does it take to maybe impress the company in such a way that they give you a final job offer without even, I mean, having you go through that process again? So I'll leave it to Safdar and Kushal again, because these people had PPIs, and obviously the way they had for Kushal it was a different journey because he did it via the competition, and probably he can explain you what difference, if there is any difference between the roles which L'Oreal gives to maybe campuses in which it goes for final placements, and maybe is it something different for people who go via competition. So maybe you can throw some light on that, and Safdar can talk about his PPO experience with Nestle. Yes, Kushal, you can start with this.
So, Harsh, do you want me to talk about my interview experience with L'Oreal? Like
Yeah, yeah,
what were the stages?
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And also, I mean, the kind of role that you are into, is it same for people who are hired through final placements in our batch, like not in from our college, but from say other colleges?
Yeah. So, if I were to speak specifically, again speaking basically specifically for L'Oreal, yes, it is same. Now, if I were to basically give you information, L'Oreal this year hasn't hired a lot of people from finals, and that is because they've had a freeze, as I already mentioned, and they just decided to basically retain most of their employees that they'd already hired. So, in L'Oreal, even after getting hired as an MT, unlike maybe most of the other companies, you're still on probation until the end of the first year. And historically, if I go by their trend, they are known to chuck out people if they don't like their work, which is not something which the HR is happy about as a culture that's there in L'Oreal. But they've been working very hard on it. And this year, I think this year I know all the management trainees have been retained. So that's been there. Now, if I were to talk about what my interview experience or what were the stages that I had to go through. So initially, I had a psychometric test. It was around, and I think as Safdar had mentioned, time is a very key element, guys. Don't try to crack a psychological test. by thinking ki, you don't want to come across as an ideal person. It's not required, but the test is designed in such a way that you will be answering across multiple categories of questions, and then it just finds an interrelation and gives a report. So if for instance you are not going to help a particular friend out in a particular situation, and the question asks you whether you will help yourself first or the friend, and if in reality you are going to help yourself first, then just answer that. That is how it's going to work out. Don't try and fake yourself in a psychometric test. I think that definitely doesn't work out. And extra time to lena hi mat, that's like the biggest blunder that you will do in a psychometric test. So that was there. Then I had a digital marketing test. So this particular general assembly test that I talked to you about. So I had to give this BM1. Again, that was I think one of the shortlist criteria. So I gave that. Then that was the second thing. Then the third thing was a telephonic interview. So yeah, again, there's no fix onto who is it from the company who will call you. In my case, it was a particular HR from the company that called, but with a lot of other friends of mine who had given the similar interview, they got calls from brand heads or area managers or region managers. So that can happen, and the HR basically just like for whichever profile you're interviewing for, they tend to basically reach out to those people, and if they are not free, then they take it themselves, or they might maybe schedule it for a little later. That's how they try and schedule these interviews. And so yeah, I had this particular telephonic interview. Then there was this assessment day in the company, wherein they called up people from the summers as well and from the competition as well. So for everybody, the path kind of converged eventually, wherein they were all brought into the same assessment day. And so we'd been given a case initially, and I think there were some 15 17 people on that particular day in the assessment center wala thing, out of which we were three of us from NM who'd gone through this competition, and the others, and I think there was one more team from the competition, and others were all summer interns majorly. And then it was just a level playing ground for everybody. From there on, we were given weightages, like every round had weightages to itself maybe. And now I don't know what exactly they were, but so yeah, then there was this case around. So we have this brand called Garnier, and we had this particular sub brand in it called Black Naturals, which is like a hair color sachet. And the whole case study was around the distribution of this particular thing. So a lot of terminologies or terms, I mean, I wasn't even aware of it until I was already into the middle of the discussion. So in fact, I had to wait it out to just hear the other members talk about a couple of things, so that I could get a sense of what that particular thing even meant. So that is there. And I think, as Safdar mentioned, just try and dig deeper into whatever concepts you can get a hold on. As he was saying, maybe read Kotler or read marketing books. And like, say, if I am going for a commercial interview with L'Oreal, so I ensure that I know all about distribution, at least from an FMCG angle. So maybe reach out to your alum seniors and just try and get a hold of how it works in a particular company, and then that most of it is almost similar across other companies. So that helps. Now, we had this case study discussion for around 2.5 years, hours, and it got pretty intense as such, because we were given a whiteboard, we were given laptops, and they were like, use Excel sheets, use this whiteboard, do whatever you want. And this panel was just sitting as if they were watching a movie for around 2 hours, and looking at people talking to each other. What is it that we are saying? What is it that we are, how are we dividing the work, and who is doing what? So that is how it went. And after that, I had two personal interviews with with them. So again, there were three people in each interview, with with one particular one panelist being an HR, and the other two being from different brands, one from marketing and one from sales, essentially. And yes, again, there was no fix about the number of interviews, but again, I think a lot of these things are prone to change. It depends upon the talent acquisition manager's structure that she set. So in our time, this is how it was set. So it was basically the same for everybody. Like, it came down to the same thing. I had this assessment day center thing. I think they did this around 2 to 3 days. So for maybe the people who they had shortlisted in the finals, or through other, like, they had this other competition as well around sustainability. So for them also it happened through a different assessment day thing. So yeah, but eventually it came down to the same thing,
Okay. And
same
well,
process.
I mean, just like you said, you had such a grilling process. I mean, so many rounds of thing. I mean, these processes you have. So how did you make sure that you like contributed more than what others would have done in terms of content or maybe the way you presented stuff? Because that's how you converted it into a PPO. Because what I understand from whatever you said was to get at a level playing field to maybe other summer interns, you had 3 rounds, like three preliminary rounds, maybe an interview call or maybe that test which you were talking about, digital marketing test, and then psychometric thing. After that, you were at the level playing field. And then how did you compete with these people? Because they had already worked with the brand in their summer internship, maybe for 2 months, 3 months. They knew how maybe different brands of L'Oreal's function. So how tough was it for you to maybe break through that process into, I mean, convert it into a PP, or maybe it was easier because you already knew about about L'Oreal in a lot of way because of the competition that you participated in. So how
Yeah,
was it for you? I mean, yeah.
I got the context. So in fact, yeah, that's a very good question because the summer interns naturally had a you know extra mileage, I would say, because they understood the company far better because they were working with it like continuously for 2 months. Now like going into the company's office or going into a particular distributor's environment and then working with the company directly, again, since mine was a competition, again, even though there was a lot of active involvement from the company side once we had cleared the national finals to get into the internationals, but still it was not like it couldn't match the level of involvement which a summer intern would have in 2 months. So that is there. Now for that, all I tried to do was I tried to reach out to my seniors who had cracked L'Oreal from NMIMS. I tried to get a grasp of what the company was like, what the culture was like, and how's the work or the divisions across the company distributed, and how does it work around. Basically, I tried to get an understanding from him first, and not just him. I reached out to 2 to 3 more people who cracked L'Oreal from NM, and that is one thing that I did. And secondly, in terms of preparation, I think I spent a good 1 week's time preparing for L'Oreal. So I tried to read up about all their brands that they own globally, and like some of the basics of marketing that we do around the whole STP analysis in terms of understanding the markets, their audience, and where is it that their main value proposition lies in. So I tried to study that in brief for various brands, and yeah, that's how I prepared for it. And since it was a commercial interview, so like before L'Oreal started the interview process, they'd rolled out a list to us in terms of the division that we would want to join, the function that we would want to join eventually. And they'd given some 5 functions, and I had chosen sales as my primary function, and then it was e-commerce, and then it came marketing, and then there were other. I think one was around digital. So yeah, those things were there. So yeah, depending on that and depending on the particular role that the company thought you're good for, they then my interview started towards the commercial thingy. So because I knew it was a commercial interview, I prepared more on the distribution and the sales side in a more deeper way, I would say.
Okay. Okay, that was actually a good way to probably beat the people who already work for the company in the summer internships. Yes, Safdar, if you want to, I mean, add on how you made sure that you converted Nestle.
Yeah, so I think the problem with when you do autumns is that you don't have any other interns from other B schools with you, so you don't get that king treatment. Number one, number two, people generally don't give you time. Okay, so that was two challenges I faced when I was interning. But there are a few things which I think I did right, which landed me the PPI. So during the internship, I had this philosophy of under promising and over delivering. So the thing is, when I'm given a task by my manager, generally I have this habit of being like, okay, I'll do this and I'll do this also, okay, without realizing how much time I might take in doing that. So in trying to impress the manager, people often tend to over commit or over promise. I think that is something which you should not do. If he's telling you to do something, do that and try to over deliver. Don't tell him you're gonna do this much extra, but when you present your work, you do that and then show. So he thinks that, you know what, he did not promise this, but he's still over delivering. I think that is something which I did, because apart from my 2 kits that I made, I also went ahead and I had a talk with with Swiggy about having a tie-up and how we can use those kits to distribute. So I also had a distribution model in place for my kit, which I made. So that was something which was not asked of me, but I went ahead and did it. So that is one thing: under promise and over deliver. Also, give you 100% in everything because you don't know what they will like, because you don't know which aspect who is watching. So, for example, the HR told me that for your mid review you can only have 10 slides. You cannot don't exceed by even one slide. I'm like, sure, but I realized I had 14 slides. So I use an animation where on one slide I will overlay a black transparent thing and I'll show it over on top of that. So that allowed me to put it under 10 slides. And that was the entire objective. I had to do it in 10 slides. So I did that. Good part was my manager noticed, okay, and then he went to the brand manager of Ceregro and he called her and he showed her some the show, open your PPT, show him what you did. They liked the animation a lot, and now they're using it. They're still using it. The nutrition department still uses that animation a lot in their PPTs. So that was one example. I once mentioned the Pavlov experiment while explaining a point. And uh, the person, the senior who was sitting in front of me, he was the head of nutrition business. He was not paying attention, but when he heard Pavlov, because this was different from the regular stuff that I was saying, he's like, okay, tell me about Pavlov. So when you put in effort in everything, I think at some place it gets noticed. So that is one thing. One very important point is you have to be inquisitive and ask questions. Okay, ask questions because you are not born in the company. So ask as many questions as you can. It helps. It also shows that you're keen to learn. So if you don't know, even if it's the stupidest of question, you don't know how a territory works, ask your manager or ask someone who you can get hold of, because I think that is of paramount importance. It also shows you're interested in the company. So that is one thing. And the last point is you should not hog credit. You should instead give it. Sounds a little antithetical, but if you hawk credit, people can see through it. For example, in my final review PPT, I had two slides on credits. So I ended up thanking almost 50 to 60 people who helped me, okay, with even the smallest of things. So I think when you show gratitude, if nobody else, the HR will at least like it, okay, if nobody else likes it, okay. So I think these are the four things that I did right in my internship. And when it came to PPI, I made notes. So last 2 days of my internship, when my job was almost done, I just took a notebook and I went from I used to make daily notes. So every day, what I used to do, I still have those 60 papers. I would just go through all of them. I'll make notes. So you need to know every number. You need to know every figure about not just your project or your brand, but also about that business. So I was not supposed to know about Ceregra Organic Selection. I had to know about nutrition business as a whole, because you never know if the person who's going to interview you might not be from that same business. And that is what happened in my case. I interned in nutrition, and the head of the dairy business came and interviewed me. So since he does not know my project, now I have to explain him my project, and he can ask me anything under the sun, because he's not going to be that particular about my brand. He'll be like, tell me something about lactose and stuff like that. So I think for PPS, you need to know the company really, really well. So yeah, but having said that, there are a lot of things that go south. There are things that are not in your control, like a bad boss, a business slump, a company policy, COVID. There's no vacancy. So if in case, God forbid, you guys don't get a PPO after two good PPIs, okay, sometimes it's your mistakes. Most times it's not. Okay, most times it's something external which you can't control. Okay, so yeah, I think that is how I approached my PPO and my internship.
That was actually very insightful, Safdar. Thank you. So now that we have covered mostly things related to summer internships, we are actually open to questions.
Yeah, I think again, like I remember, I can't name the company, but there was this one particular interview wherein I think the interviewer already interviewed some, 10, 15 people, and like around 30 minutes per interview minimum. So that's like around, even if you've had your lunch, you would have taken some 5, 6 hours already. And then after a point of time, they just maybe want to not really ask you very, very technical, and like the interviews which would have happened in the first set of interviews, they might have been like a different set of questions. And maybe they could just randomly throw in that particular movie sort of a question which you're talking about, just sell me yourself, or tell me why should we have you, just tell me one thing. and that's going to be your interview, or just sell me this particular pen. But it doesn't happen most of the times, guys. It's like maybe 5% of the times, or maybe lesser. So it doesn't work around that. Most of the questions will be normal, like basis your maybe CV or whatever, but not like dramatic questions.
So Safdar, you sat for 4 interviews. So did you encounter anything of this thing in your interviews?
I think one person asked me, but I think he was the odd one out. Okay, I think that sometimes you meet someone who's fun loving. Okay, in the panelist is fun loving, so he'll just ask you. Okay, he'll be like, "You're from Bihar, speak some Bhojpuri for me." No, you can't. I mean that happens, like as he said, probably as Kushal said, probably 5% of the time. So otherwise, I think it's mostly serious stuff, and nothing. I saw you don't have good stories to share here. So yeah, it's generally office questions. Yeah, mostly from the
Okay,
CV.
okay. Shweta, did you have anything of, I mean, any experience revolving around this fact?
Yeah, I think a lot of people. I even after my MBA, when I was interviewing to shift my jobs, I was asked this question. But I think how you can see, generally what happens that people think that if you start with this question, they are already not interested and you won't be hired. But there are times when you can actually change it. So when you're telling about yourself, the key is you tell something interesting. So I remember one of my friend telling about games. So I'm not into games, but I think he told something about PS5 and specifically some of the games you guys would be knowing better. And there was some connection which the recruiter also had with that game, and they discussed length and breadth about that game, and he was finally hired. So you can actually turn the table around when something like this happens. So this is one of the case, but it happens. So this is very subjective in nature, but it does happen.
Yeah, obviously there are odd cases out there.
Okay, so I think shifting from IT to marketing is not that easy, but it's not that difficult as well. So when you say that people, there are a few of the people in my batch I know that they were working in core IT for 3 to 4 years, and they were actually hired by companies like Dabur and Britannia. So how you position your CV, I think writing languages you can write, but I think that won't make any sense to the company. So you can position yourself in terms of how you interacted with the clients, because when you are saying marketing, the one of the key skill which they are looking at is the communication skills. So or how have you handled any front end projects. So you can always position yourself as or you have developed any business, even that for a B2B company, or even that in a B2B space, because that gives you an edge over how you have positioned yourself in your CV. Uh, and upon that, you can always, when you're interviewing, you can tell that obviously apart from this, I was doing some business analysis work, I was gathering requirements from the clients. So this tells the recruiter, okay, he was not just sitting at the back end and doing the coding, he was also interacting with client in their day-to-day life. So he knows, if I will put this person at the front end, he knows how to communicate. So that is how you can actually position your CV. Answering to the second part, that how important it is to write that you have won any district competition or something, I personally believe until and unless you have won anything at a very like, I think a lot of people write that they have won a Sanskrit competition in their 8th standard and something, that doesn't help at all. Please don't write all these things. I think anything after your 10th class maybe, and at that too at a national or a very huge level, does help. But that is for sure not in their shortlisting criteria. So that is only a talking pointer for you in their interview. uh, but I think for shortlisting that doesn't help. So but yeah, writing something, you can obviously talk during your interview, and that might make a story for you. So yeah, that is it.
Okay, thank you, Shweta.
I just want to add on to the second part of the question
Oh,
asked
yeah,
previously, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I just want to say that if you're confident that this particular competition that you're talking about, you had to you basically did something significant to get out of it. I mean, gaming is not, something to not be considered a proper thing to talk about. So I would say go ahead and talk about it, but just be sure that you find it significant enough. Because if you get asked, then your answer should make sure that the panelist is convinced that okay, it is something significant and worth putting it onto the CV. So yes, why not? And I completely agree with Shweta's point. Don't put something which is maybe कोई school का class 7-8 के time का. Try and put things which are at least beyond class 10 for a minimum. उसके नीचे कुछ नहीं.
But then, Kushal, if people don't have some stuff, like I said, and like I asked you before also, like for certifications which are free and available at mass level. But like you said, that if you do not have anything, then you don't have an option but to go ahead and put things which you did in maybe class 7, 8. So, I mean, will you still recommend not putting it, or how would it be?
Again, if it is something like, say, if you've played something at a state level and is significant, even if you've maybe done it maybe in class 6 or 7, then maybe put it for sure because it is significant. But if it is like, some intra-school competition or even an inter-school competition and you maybe won some vocab competition or some writing competition, then I think it can be left out of the CV. And vis-a-vis to it, I think then maybe some particular certification is something that would be better off as a point to be put in the CV. So yeah, I think then again, situationally, you need to weigh which point makes more sense or brings in more weight to the CV. So yeah, that.
I think one of the pressure which I have also felt during my batch, because obviously I had a work experience and I had a lot of things to put in my CV, but there were a lot of freshers and they have a pressure that you have to fill that A4 size sheet. You have to completely fill that, and so don't be keep yourself under that pressure. It's okay even if it's 3/4. If you have talking points, I think recruiter also understand that this guy is fresh out of college, and but even if you have that one pointer, maybe you have done something very good. Even if your acads are very good, sometimes that also become a talking point. So just don't be under pressure that you have to fill that one pager completely and just adding irrelevant points to that one pager.
Okay. Thank you, Shweta. There's one question which has come to me on the personal chat. So someone has asked, like, Kushal, can you explain a day in a life of a sales guy? Because you have had this opportunity. I don't think Safdar had this opportunity because everything is going online right now. So because you have already done it last year, like, what exactly is a day in a guy of a sales person like? I mean, how do you structure it, and what do you actually do in your day? I mean, how many hours do you work for, or maybe it's, as you said, it's a traveling job, like you have to go to different cities. Even in your internship you went to maybe a couple of cities. So have you covered any cities for your L'Oreal stint, or have you been just placed in Hyderabad and working from there?
So for L'Oreal, my first, I basically got lucky enough to complete all my stints in L'Oreal. Like the whole management training program is divided into 3 stints majorly, out of which the first stint is the one for which you get selected. So since I was a commercial resource, my commercial stint, commercial in L'Oreal is basically sales. So that went for around 6 months after a 1 month induction. So this is where 7 months were gone. Now 5 months left in the first year, right? Now these 5 months were divided into 2 shorter stints of 2.5 months each. And yeah, so my first commercial stint was in Hyderabad. And after that, my 2 shorter 2.5 month stint were each in one was in marketing for the professional division. I was working for this brand called Seri Expert, and then one was me working in the e-commerce division with the Flipkart group manager. So I was working around something to do with beauty and fashion on a cross category something. But yeah, coming back to the commercial thing, seems like this guy whoever's asked this question is already like a little skeptical of sales. But don't worry, guys. There's nothing like that. Sales is quite interesting. And again, there are 2 schools of thought. I mean, I know eventually, I think most of the people want to eventually, create a career path wherein you get into a brand and then maybe a division head, eventually becoming a country head or a CEO or an MD or something. So, sales or a field role plays a very important, job over here. Now, I remember having had a conversation with my marketing professor, who was Professor exam. And this, he was there, I was there, and two senior executives, managers from L'Oreal. We were all standing and just talking about career options, and then we were just saying how even an MD, like if you want to be considered for an MD, if you haven't started your career with a field role in marketing, then that at times becomes a challenge. So having had a field role is good, but again, a lot of things are changing in today's times. So this was one school of thought which says field role is very important, but the other school of thought lets you directly get into a marketing or a brand role and eventually create a career out of it, because things have changed a lot. Like, say for instance, e-commerce, that's just a different medium of selling, right? But ultimately it's sales only. So maybe you could start your career with sales and then eventually create opportunities for yourself. But only time can, I think, answer this question. Both the schools of thought, I think, exist in today's time. And in terms of what a day looks like for a sales employee, so I think it will depend on the company. Like for instance, I don't know, but I don't want to, put anything. Don't take me by my words. But I've heard, like for instance, companies like RB, they make you work a lot. They pay you a lot as well, but they make you work a lot as well. And and I know people personally who've gone from a company like say a Pidilite to an RB to eventually realizing that yaar kya kiya maine. And I know people who have taken a pay cut and have come from an RB to a L'Oreal just because they wanted some peace of mind. So both of the things are very important in L'Oreal. Sales in L'Oreal, actually, I think it depends. Matlab, you are on your own, nobody will question you a lot. And since you are doing a field job now, what we've got offices in 5 regions or 4 regions. So if you're not based out of those 4 regions, then you basically work out of your home, right? Now that is there, but you got to be on the field if you really want to do good to your territory. So that is there, and there will be a lot of calls. Obviously your day will start with a lot of coordinating and getting the distributors to build something and talking and reporting the same to your upper management. So, but that's there even in marketing. So marketing folks also tend to work around the weekends as well. But yeah, in L'Oreal, we had to do sales even on Saturdays. But marketing folks sitting out of the HO get a 2-day leave. So that's there. But you don't know behind the scenes who's working how much. So yeah.
I'll just add to that, Harsh.
Yes.
I
Go
think
ahead.
I absolutely agree with the first school of thought. Even my professors have told me that if you get an option after your empty stint to choose between brand and sales, go for sales, because in the long run, at least it's still relevant in the FMCG space, that you need to have at least 2-3 years of serious ASM experience for you to make it to the top. So that is something which I absolutely agree with. And also Kushal was right about the part about culture of a company. Okay, I'm not going to take names because this session is being recorded, but he's absolutely right about that bit also. People do move out. Some gets aggressive. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Safdar. But just because Kushal has covered a day in the life of, say, a sales guy, I would want Safdar and Shweta to cover a day in the life of a marketing guy in a business school. So probably these people get to know how you maybe allocate time and probably put time in different things to make sure that you extract the most out of these 2 years that you have at hand. So Safdar, you can probably start and Shweta can follow.
Yeah, sure. I don't think there's any template as such as to what you need to do, right? For example, in my first year of MBA, I had 2 Ds. Okay, I got 2 Ds, one in stats, one in corporate finance. Okay, and if you get 3 Ds, you're out. But in my second year, I topped in the marketing batch also. I was in the top 5. So it's there's no template answer. One very safe option is that you study hard, you get into that list of 30 people वो dean's merit list या कुछ बोलते हैं across colleges.
Yeah.
Get that on your CV, get good shortlists, okay, because a lot of consulting companies shortlist on the basis of your academic prowess. Get into a good consulting company, okay, but often in that chart there are dropouts. Okay, what if you don't get a shortlist despite that, or the interview does not work out? So that is a safe option, but still not safe enough. Apart from that, I think it's more about deciding what you want to do, because an MBA gives you way too many options. You can join competition, you can do competitions, you can join committees, dedicate yourself to placecom, get into clubs, do your festing, because every college has a fest. Get, I don't know, get serious with academics. There way too many options. I think compared in all the education institutes that we have studied, this one opens the most doors for you. And by virtue of that, it opens a lot of confusion also. So if you know what you want to get into, you think you should be very clear about that. In my first year, I was not clear about academics, so I did not do well. Second year, I was focused. But even in my first year, I ended up playing cricket, went to a few places, wrote a script for a play. So I'm sorry, but I don't have a very good answer to this question. I think you will figure out that the good part is you have 2 years. The sooner you figure out what you like more, the better it is. Just don't let your GPS slip a lot. Okay, just that. Don't let your GPS slip a lot, and then do whatever you want. Honestly, I'm sorry, it's not a very convincing answer, but that's what I have to say.
I think Kushal wants to add something. Yeah, yeah.
So I was just saying that I'm going to try, and I think I've tried to be candid in this conversation, and I want to just point out one more thing. Uh, Again, this is purely basis my experience when I entered NMIMS, and in fact, when I entered into this whole MBA concept, there's this thing about placement committee, and I want all of you to think about it properly. Like, there's a life outside it, and as Safdar had said, that there are clubs, there are committees, there's competitions, there are lectures, and there are a lot of other things. So don't take a very one-sided decision. Is all I want to say. That's it.
Okay, okay. Yeah. Yes, Shweta, if you could add on maybe that a day, I mean, how did you spend your day at NMIS?
I think I completely agree with Safdar there that you carve your own journey in MBA. So there is no secret that, okay, if you follow these 10 steps in your day, you will be able to succeed. So, talking about me, my first year, I think I was completely revolving around. I was, frankly speaking, I was not good at academics both of my years, but I just maintained a decent grade, and I just managed to like maintain a decent grade. My first year was pretty bad. In my first year I was primarily focused on like being in committees and all. So I was part of actually 3 committees, but I think that took a toll on my health, and I decided to leave few. I continued with Placecom, but I think, as Kushal mentioned, that you should take a wise call. Uh, so, especially people, people will know that when to take that wise call. For me, it came a bit late, but I then decided that in my second year I want to do and continue with competition. So, I I I did around almost more than 20 competitions in my second year, because competition helps. The fun part of competition is you travel a lot in your MBA, so you get to see other campuses if you are participating in like inter-campuses competition. So I got a chance to travel to IIM Calcutta campus, IIM Ahmedabad, then MDI and all. And apart from this, when you're taking part in corporate competitions, you I think the fear of presenting in front of someone, that goes away. So when you're presenting in front of like, because I still remember I was present for my HUL. I had to present, so I was a campus finalist, and the regional marketing manager was came as a judge. So that is a fun experience in itself. So you should not limit yourself to being a part of committee. But yeah, there are people, and the most crucial advice I would give you all: don't compare yourself with anyone. Please don't do that, because if you will start comparing yourself with I think that will put you in depression. So there I've seen a lot of people just go into depression that uska to placement ho gaya, he uske paas to work ex bhi nahi tha, uske paas to ye bhi nahi tha, uske paas to ye. Please don't do that. I think that is a common mistake we all do. Please carve your own journey, study do competitions, but I think because a lot of people, when they see other people getting a sorted placement, summer placement, and then eventually converting that summer placements into PPO, they just get into depression. यार उसको तो कुछ भी नहीं आता था and उसका हो गया. So please don't do that. I think at the end of the day, given the fact I have been passed out 2 years back from my MBA college, I think I'm doing pretty fine, and a lot of all my batchmates are doing really fine. So trust me, you will be fine at the end of the 2 years, 3 years. Because at the end of the day, you are getting that brand on your CV. So don't worry about it.
I just
Yeah,
have
thank.
like one final point to add, if
Yes,
that's
yes,
okay, Harsh.
yes,
So
yes,
I
yes.
was fed a lie when I joined a B school. Okay, I was told a lie. It's the most incorrect advice that someone has ever given me. A lot of people gave me. They said network a lot. You need to know everybody in the batch. Okay, and SP has a batch size of 240 people. There's still a dozen people I do not know. Okay, but I think I did decent. And say if you're in NM or Indore where the batch size is 600, you cannot know everybody. So like I think that networking advice is a little wrong. Like, it's partially wrong. You need to know people because you might need them in the long run. I think, but the best way is to go for quality over quantity. And I think one thing which worked out, I think for me and a few of my friends, is if you can help people when they need it, then they'll remember you for a long time. And I think that is what matters. So this is 80-20 rule. If someone needs help, and that if you do that, it is 80% important to them, but it's only taking 20% of your time. Do it, because I think that's a very good thumb rule which works. And I think in the end, if you want to see how you fared in your 2 years of MBA, a yearbook is a very good book to pick up and see. Okay, because the things that people write about you uh, is what I think at the end of the day matters. So I think that is, if you want to see your report card, just open your yearbook. I think uh, that is my final advice.
Great, great. Actually, I'll just sum up what Shweta and Safdar said. So, a couple of things I picked up from there was something which Shweta mentioned was traveling. So, if you participate in competitions like Kushal has witnessed it, he's traveled international to Paris, and if not maybe international level, you can at least witness the other campuses, because I mostly travel to all the 20, 30 campuses that are top business schools across the country in my 2 years, and I stayed there for 3, 4 days because they had their fests, and the experience was I can't even explain that, because if you take my time from my 2 years that I had at my business school, probably 6, 7 months I was not at the campus. So that experience, obviously, Shweta, which was talking about, was great. And Safdar, as you mentioned, the last point was, I think it was revolving around. I missed out on the last point. I actually
The
slipped
the,
out
the
of my
yearbook
mind.
bit, the
Yeah, yeah.
networking.
Networking. Sorry, networking. Yeah, the concept which we know. I mean, networking actually doesn't mean just maybe dropping a hi to someone and saying how are you, how are you good or not. It means developing bonds which can probably reap. You can reap benefits out maybe in the long run. Networking doesn't mean I know a lot of people, but probably if I approach them maybe sometime in future that I want to. I'm actually confused. I want to shift my job or switch somewhere else. Do you have say some sort of an advice for me? People will not come back to you if you do not have bonds. So networking is confused with this word called bonds. You have to maintain bonds, and rather than just go by this normal logic of maybe knowing 100 people. Obviously, in my batch itself, there were, because we have like 10, 11 sections, which has around say 60 people in each section. So even if you know people from your section and you know it properly, that will probably be a better thing to do rather than maybe know all 600 people, but at a generic level. So maybe know 60 people at a personal level who can help you out in your future endeavors wherever you are stuck, rather than maybe know 600 people, but just for the sake of adding them in your contact list, that will not help. Yeah, so I think that was about it. And yeah, Kushal, the last thing I had this thing in my mind that because you traveled abroad and you may be competing with different people from different nationalities, how was that experience for you? I did not even ask you when I was in the campus, but I wanted to clear this out in this session, that how was that experience actually?
So I think that was a very, very big thing that I was looking forward to in this whole competition, because it was almost like a dream coming true at that point of time, and it was crazy, man. It was very nice. Like, having gotten the opportunity of meeting people, I think there were some 51 countries, with I think around 3 to 5 countries having two teams from that particular region. So India also had two teams. One was from SPJ, and the other team was basically from SPJ. And yeah, the experience was crazy. Those 3 to 4 days that we spent are still some of the days to look back onto. And again, did meet a couple of very interesting people who were from other regions, and had a great experience. So it was insane. And I think that whole flavor of how much confidence you get of yourself is something that I re-experienced at a whole new level. Because in the current setup, maybe in India, you look at others and you look at yourself. But when you're there globally, you're looking at every other country, and students who are doing well in every other region, and then you look at yourself in from that lens, comparing yourself to the students from other regions. It does help you get a perspective. So a better visionary perspective, so to say, I would say. Like, your mind kind of opens up um, to a better extent. Like, I personally feel more confident, I think, right now about being Indian as well in general. Yeah.
Thank you, Kushal. That was actually a perfect summary of. I don't know whether you were dropping hints as to whether being an Indian was a disadvantage or an advantage, but because you won, I would consider that as an advantage.
So, I mean, I wanted to just say that sometimes you're not sure about कि पता नहीं क्या होगा, but then once you have done it, you kind of feel कि yeah, man, you're there. So don't think that you can't create a mark. You can easily do it. That's all I want to say.
Obviously. Thank you so much. I think that's about the session for today, and we'll just wrap this. So I'll just drop a thanks to all the three panelists who have actually taken out their precious time at a very short notice. They had to probably appear for the session. But thank you, the panelists. Thank you, everyone who attended the session. And hopefully, you would have known a lot about FMCG and cleared a lot. I mean, the air that revolves around it, that whether one should actually have just a session in FMCG, just a career in FMCG, or maybe marketing is not just about FMCG, but about other domain as well. So thank you everyone for joining in, and hopefully we'll have such an insightful session going forward. Thank you guys. Thank
Thank
you,
you so
Kushal.
much,
Thank you,
Harsh.
Shweta. Thank you, Safdar. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Arsh, and all the best, everyone, for your 2 years ahead in
Always
MBA.
great.
Yeah, all the very best, guys.
All the best.